thinking that drinking last night was actually made my voice better. It does sound much better, right? All right. So this is Otto. He's the guy who made the topic. He is an open-minded person and sees everything. That's a different story. I needed an image because otherwise it looks very orange, and I don't like orange, and it's weird. Okay, so my name is Evgeni, and I'm going to talk about hacking people. It's a very controversial topic. How many of you read the description of the topic on the website? 1, 2, 3. Did you notice a word that might have sounded unfamiliar to you if you're not speaking English? It's called iconoclast. No? Someone who's a native speaker that could explain what that means? Okay, I'll do it. It basically means that I'm going to be ranting about things that other people made, so it's very negative in a way, but not so much. So we did the marshmallow challenge yesterday. We won, thanks to Leo, who's not here. Oh, he's here. I'm going to show you another way of using the marshmallow. And so during the 90s, there's a group of psychologists made an experiment. And it was focused on the concept of delayed gratification, which basically means that you do something and then you postpone the consequences and then you don't get rewarded, and then you need time in order to get rewarded. And what they did is that they took a bunch of kids around the 4-year-olds, and then they put them in a room and they gave them a plate with a marshmallow in the middle, and then they had to sit and wait for 20 minutes without touching the marshmallow. Well, they could touch it but not eat it. So the thing is that they promised the kids that they would double the amount of marshmallows for every 20 minutes that they pass. So they locked them in a room, put a camera in, and they left them there. And I have a short video because you just need to see that. And it plays now.
Hasta para un niño de 4
It's in
años,
Colombia.
es atractiva la idea de tener el 100% de retorno a la inversión en 15 minutos. Sin embargo, algunos de ellos, tan pronto la puerta se cerró, se comieron el marshmallow inmediatamente. Otros, en cambio, resistieron el impulso.
She's my favorite one. It's gonna get better.
So,
You see, in psychology, along the last 100 years, people made very extended experiments. And this one lasted for 21 years because they waited 20 years after this was concluded to see what's going to happen with those kids. And it turns out that, long story short, all the kids that didn't eat marshmallow and were able to postpone gratification were actually what we consider successful in life. I did that with my cousin when she was about 4, so I'm waiting to see what's going to happen with her. Now, the thing is that what this is proposing is that there are factors that we are not really controlling, and what they did is that they tried to measure in a very simple way how their personalities are constructed before being influenced from anything external in life, like experiences or being educated or nurtured, and so on and so forth. Now, this is a very long shot for our topic, but I think I have to explain to you how this is connected to what we do and how I got into that topic and how is that actually valuable to any of us. So in year 2015, I started writing a academia publication with a friend of mine. We thought it's very cool, and I was already familiar with personality theories and how they're used in different in the enterprise world, also in psychology, education, computer gaming, and whatever. So it took us a year, and we thought that we were like the top-notch research because we researched a year everything in academia. We found out there's almost nobody researching this. So the title of this is that we investigated personality theory through explorative studies of a computer game called League of Legends. For those that you don't know, League of Legends is a massive multiplayer online, whatever, RPG, RTS, something type of game where you play it with a character, go around, fight with other people that also control characters. But the thing is that in this game, you're offered to buy virtual goods in the form of different skins and enhancements for the game for real money, and that's it. It leads to no benefit, no competitive advantage, no nothing. So you just give your money and then you get a different tunic for your character, and that's it. And this company is a multi-million-dollar company. They distribute the game for free. Their business model is fantastic because they do everything for free, and then people pay $1 for one of those, and they still are able to produce $23 billion per year. So nobody knows how this is happening. We contacted them during writing this and asked them, we know how you do it, because we obviously, the answer is that most of you, if I ask you that question in that room, most of you would most likely say, and I'm assuming, that's my insurance line, that I'm not saying the BS thing. You're probably going to say, because everyone wants to be different. And that answers the questions, but if you're on the side of the people who are producing a system like that, you have no idea what it means to be different. So you need to find out what different means, and then if everyone is different, how do I get to each of you in a way that you're going to give me your $1 to buy something that lives only in that game, gives no any value to the game itself, but only to your personality. So what we did is that we studied extensively personality theories, and then we went to and asked many people tons of questions, and by tons I mean thousands of questions in interviews that were nightmares. Then we analyzed the data, and then we failed. Turns out there's no connection, which is not true, but the research was designed in a way that it failed us. Where's Taras Shipka? He likes my fails. Hey, man. So we published the thing through a university journal that nobody has ever heard. I can't even remember the name of it. The thing is that a year from later, my friend, the other guy who we cooperated writing this, he sent me this photo, and it's a bit trimmed because of other reasons, but it has 820 downloads and 2,460 hits, which is unbelievable because it's in a place where nobody knows how to find. And the only way for you to get there is to know what you're looking for, because you need to be, search engines for academic journals are horrible. It's from the ages of typewriters. They don't work. You type in the title and it doesn't find the article. But so you need to be very good and skilled at searching for academia titles in order to find this one. So it turns out that there's an excessive amount of interest around our topic. And we were, I think, one of 8 papers by that time which were talking about this. A further investigation led us to the fact that nobody has ever quoted it. And I reread it a few years later, found out that we didn't do well. But still, that generated that. I found out later why that interest, but at that time we didn't know. So why are everyone so interested in it? So looking at this, we thought that maybe we need to go further and do a better job and do another research and then start thinking about books and publications and blogs and media and try just to develop the topic. With the assumption that once you know why people want to be different and how they want to be different, we can actually create a framework that would allow you to do that. And that's where trouble starts. So that's my way of saying that you should all be aware of the climate change. So the ocean has risen. It also duplicates with a personality trait theory called the ocean model. I think Anna's here. When she was recruited for SoftServe, she went through personality test in order her personality to be assessed so she could be a better match for her team and the project she's going to be working on. So the application of personality theories, that's so hard to say, is huge. And we can actually see it everywhere. And that's something that I want you to keep in your minds while we are going through that topic, because it would raise many questions that we probably don't have answers to. So very quickly, short story of personality theories. It all starts with Aristotle, who thought, okay, I should be able to group people. So if I know that you are different than this guy, but those two are the same, so I would call those lions because they're brave and they want to do everything at first and they say yes and so on and so forth. And this guy would be a snake because he prefers to wait and see what happens and then act and so on. So he used 4 animals, and that's how the personality thing started. And then all the philosophers after that find their own way to explain it. Then we go to behavioral theories that try to explain personalities, and that's conditioning. Conditioning is great. It works. I'll preview later, which was unintentional. Remember that too. Pavlov's dog is an example of that. That's when you bring a bow and you give food to a dog, and then you do that many times and so on and so forth. And then there's the biological one, which explains that your personalities are based on your genes. So if you have those genes, that's your personality, period, and that's it. So that means that you're predisposed to certain behaviors and reactions. And then there's the psychodynamic thing. That's chronologically ordered, by the way. Only the Z Freud, I like ZZ Top, but that's another thing. He said, you're born in this way, but there is also the first 7 years where it's not the mother, surprise, it's everything else and the mother that would make you be that person for the rest of your life, and then you're unchangeable from that moment. He was so wrong. And then there's the humanist one, that's Maslow, and then you're probably aware of the Maslow behavioral needs and all that. It works in many situations, but overall it's just not enough. And then there's the trait theories. So that's very advanced way to look at personalities, because, see, I was trained as an information architect in my formal education. So I've always been looking at that as structures. And the thing is that inventories are basically huge amounts of libraries of attributes that are describing people, and that's it. So let's say that I have a library of 50,000 words, and I have said that this group describes one type of person, and that's it. Now the question is how to map people towards that and how to find out that they do those, and that happens through questionnaires. Really boring questionnaires like the ocean model is like 500 or 200 questions, and then they have different gradings, and then they see in which group of maybe you're falling into. So that means that a lot of people did a lot of manual work, and they put words into groups. So we went all the way from conditioning, cortisol, which is the hormone, that's the genes, human needs, self-actualization, that's the Maslow, and then all the way to NLP, stands for natural language processing, and data science. And that's where we are going to shift again, and we're going to cook. So, Jean-Paul, could you help me how to pronounce that? Pâté à choux, maybe? Yes, what is it? So it's very small desserts full of, in Ukrainian, there might be a word called éclair, no? Yes, so that's it, but very small ones. So it's a very French way to do it. Last time I did it, it took me hours. It's profiteroli, maybe Italian, no? Yeah, it's awesome. It's a pastry with a lot of cream in it. Doesn't matter, ignore me. So let's cook. So we take a pinch of psychometrics. This is great. Psychometrics is the study concerned with the theory and technique of psychology measurement. So that means that this is the tool set that would enable us to measure your personalities. In our case, it's the ocean model. So what are the tools, like the questionnaires and surveys and other things. And then we have 2 tablespoons of personality trait inventories, publicly available. Everyone can use that. It's full of it. Any language, you name it, it exists, and people have been doing. There are people that do only that for 50 years in their lives, and that's it, and it's done. And they do that by hand, and they type it, and they say this word has this value, and not just describing languages. Linguistics are. You have no idea how advanced linguistics are, and how early in time, and we have never actually thought of employing that enough in design, because the Nazis were good at that. The Nazis developed a whole language, and they changed the language, and it's a whole different story, but that's how powerful linguistics are, and they change people's mindset. If you wonder, how come people in Nazi Germany were able to live there, and they would still say that they do believe in the regime and in the way that the government was ruled, and that's because how they changed the language, and it's technically pure brainwashing, but in a very advanced way. And then psychographics, 1 liter. Couldn't come up with a better one. But so psychographics is the qualitative methodology to use to describe consumers on psychological attributes. Basically, that's grouping the psychometrics in a very fancy way to say that. And then we need broth, right? Because we're cooking a soup, maybe. But yeah, it's a soup. So it was a pastry, but now it's a soup. So how to program. Natural language processing is basically how to program computers to process and analyze large amounts of natural language data. So that means that we know how to measure it. We have the tool set. We know how to group it. Now we take the data, and that's actually how we are going to combine it all. That's the good ingredient. And now this one is a bit more complicated. So the last ingredient and the most important one starts from the feedback loop. So see, this is a like button on Facebook. Every time you click it, the person that has posted or shared or whatever did with something receives the feedback that you liked it, and then that's how it goes. So it's as simple as that, and it looks useless, but it's not. So a very bright person that I discovered very late in my life, and I still don't remember his name, he's called Kosinski, wrote a publication in, pay attention, 2013. That's 2 years before I started mine. He wrote something that's called Private Traits and Attributes Are Predictable from Digital Records of Human Behavior. So what he did is he took all of those ingredients, combined them together, and then he achieved something that Matt McBride, for those that are not from SoftServe, I don't know who he is, talked about last year. And that's Vergandi's innovation matrix. So what he did is that he achieved technological epiphany. And that's where there's a radical change in technology and meaning. Because all of those things that I used as ingredients were existent tens of years before this all happened, right? But he found a way to combine those. And what happened is that he mapped the user data from things on Facebook with all the other things and some technology and NLP, and he found out that he could measure human personalities based on their likes on Facebook. Now this is genius. It's also not very complicated. He was just able to map it all and do that, and he reached that technological epiphany with not a lot of effort, just some smart work, not hard one. And then voila, you have it. It's called behavioral micro-targeting. That means that you can reach to a single person across the whole platform of whatever digital or not digital environment you're working on. In our case, we can think about Facebook. And then you can reach to every single person and serve exactly what he or she is prone to be interested or influenced by. So there's the American Association. That's by the way, a hint. So there will be a question for you to answer. So that's a hint for it, and pay attention for it, because it will help a lot. So the American Association of Political Consultants said that behavioral market targeting is starting a new era in consumer and voter targeting. The keyword is voter, if you don't notice. And another thread in that story. So Jamie Bartlett is a journalist for a publication somewhere in the States. I think he changed, so I'm not sure where. And he went to a tech company in order to find out more and interview the CEO. And then he went in, and then he saw this poster the photo is from Twitter. That's why the quality. And then it says, it's the poster of the Congress Party. I'm not very good at those symbols, but what you need to know for that is that it's related to the government and to the people that are actually in the elections for the government. And this was very surprising because this is not supposed to be there, because the company that the CEO was part of was involved in a lot of things that later found out to be devastating for many and in many ways. So how many of you know what that logo represents? Yeah, exactly. So what Cambridge Analytica did is that they did take the behavioral micro-targeting and all the ingredients, and they cooked that potato soup. And they used it for their own purpose. Now, that's how they did it, and it's what it does. There's a data scientist in SoftSurf. He's not here. He made one of those soups for like 15 minutes, and you just plug it in. You scrape all the data from your Twitter account with one click saying, I authorize myself, take it, and then it gives you all the data you need so you can micro-target the behavior of someone based on that. And here comes the storm of questions that it might not be really ethical to do that, because all that information is publicly available, and everyone with a little bit of technical knowledge could scrape whatever they want for you from everywhere, and they could do millions of things. So was it successful? And then it says Belgium waffles, because it's the wrong question. It doesn't matter if it was successful or not. For some reason, it might have been successful. For some reason, it might have not. For example, there's another side of personality, and there's like hundreds of different theories. And one of the latest and most prominent ones suggests that human personality is based of two components. And one of them is temperament, and that's what most of the people through ages focused on measuring. And then there's character, and the character is in the future, because that's what you become when you experience or expose yourself to certain events or conditions. So this is Roma. I love him. And I will be very careful saying that, because I don't want to get to be understood wrong. And feel free to ask me about that later. But we worked together for 6 weeks in Austin. And we enjoyed food. I gained weight quite a bit. And I developed a habit in myself to every afternoon I would go and pick up a snack. And I'll open it on the desk, and then I'll sit there and eat it and do whatever I'm doing. But then a strange thing happened. I've been doing that for days, and at some point I noticed accidentally, and that's the important part, it was not on purpose. I noticed accidentally that every time I do that, and as soon as I open it and sit down and eat it, Roman would take up his head, look at me, see what I'm doing, and then he would go and do the same. And that would happen every single day, because I was conditioning myself to do that as a habit, and then not on purpose, I conditioned himself to do that. So Roman is, I would say, highly above average intelligence. So you would say that behavioral micro-targeting would be something that could be easily applied to people that are not smart or not intelligent or not careful enough. But it happened to him in a very simple way. And how is that even possible? This is a photo in the zoo, and that's how this mother is actually treating her kid. So this is what behavioral micro-targeting is basically doing to people when content is served. So it's a small kid that is developing himself, but it's still on-chain. And then it's actually restraining for the direction that one would go on his own. And this photo is a metaphor, so don't take it very literally. But if you're not worried so far from what I've said, I don't think you're paying attention. This guy is standing in central Orlando, and he's actually protesting against the current government in the U.S. And I took the photo after having a great conversation with him, and he shared a lot of what I just told you now. And he said, I know that everyone knows that this is happening, but it still happens, and we still don't know why. Well, we do know why it happens, but we'll get to that later. It's just happening. And who's responsible for that? Well, I don't know. Maybe everyone. See, the thing is that you're not able to influence, sorry, what is happening, because you're not able to react to the, because if responsible means that you're able to respond, well, we are not. Because the behavioral market targeting works on a layer that is not actually rational. And that's the biggest problem. So how could this slip through? Well, a friend of mine has done research on how universities are built. And thinking that most of that came from academia. This is probably the layout of, I don't know, 60% of the universities worldwide. So the yellowish squares are disciplines in a university. And this is a map. On the one side, you would have tech disciplines like engineering, programming, everything very technically related that basically enables the data science and so on. Mathematics, or the very natural sciences. And then on the other side, you would have design and architecture where the heart of ethics lives. So this is how universities look like, and those guys are never close to each other. They do not communicate. And in our cases, when Kaczynski developed his theory for how to measure personalities based on Facebook likes, he did it on his own, and he was only interested in the fact that he's able to define this. And then on the other side, the guys who developed the natural language processing and assembled the algorithms that did the calculations and said this is this, were not interested in ethics at all. So, and then what I didn't put here is the business and the enterprises that are driven by completely different factors than academia, and they're basically able to twist this perspective and do something completely different. So now we're going to step back a little and try to think about it more foundationally, because with everything presented so far, it looks like we're in trouble and there's no way out, because we don't know how to do that. And there's no way how to do that. And I want to go the linguistic way. And there's Oliver, he gave a talk about the information entropy. And what basically he did, he dissected how information is structured and how we use it and how we employ it and what do we do with it. So the very first thing that we have is data. And data is psychometrics, if you think about it in this context. So that's everything that we got out of it, and that what do we do with it. So with a little bit of tricks and knowledge and skills, we can convert data into information. And information is what we do. We take data and then we make it information through our user interfaces, and then we make it usable. So what information is empowering is that through information you're able to gain knowledge, and that's what we're striving to do with our users, so we can present them the accurate information so they could take knowledge-based decisions in their professions or activities and so on. And then in a very, very, very rare case, which is not really happening most of the time, knowledge is empowering wisdom. Wisdom is something that not many achieve, ever. Hopefully we are not part of those, but let's say that wisdom is the peak that we're not going to climb because it's too high and we have problems with attitude. And we're going to stick with knowledge, because knowledge seems like a good place to be in order to be more responsible. So if we go to the Bible and we look into the meaning of word knowledge, because you would say that knowledge means to know, but actually it's rather different. So knowledge comes from a part in the Bible that says, he knew her intimately. And that's the English translation of the Bible. And it often says, and he knew her intimately and she had a son. Which made me think that I should go through and dig deeper and look into etymology and think about what is the origin of that word and how it got its meaning. And then looking into it, and then the definition is that knowledge as a noun is the sense of sexual intercourse. And that's from the 1400s. So that meant, back then that meant to know somebody. So Middle English, and to have sexual intercourse with is even earlier, from the 1300s. I know it sounds a bit provocative, maybe. But the point I'm trying to make here is that knowledge is something which is very intimate. So having the knowledge is empowering to a point where you can. Matt is looking at me very angry now. It's empowering, and this is creating situations like Cambridge Analytica, and that's why it's very important. How do we use knowledge, and how do we create that, and where all that knowledge is flowing through. So to wrap that up, I would say that, and that's a little bit leading to the inclusion design workshop that's following. So Cambridge Analytica is a perfect example of something that was designed to include everyone on an optimum level. It literally reaches to the whole diversity within the whole inclusivity, and it's just crazy because you can literally reach to every single person without someone having to design it one by one and prototype all of that. But then that means it sounds good, but it's also not, because it's also designed to exclude as much as to include, and it excludes rational behavior. So there's no rational thinking after you've been in the machine, because you've been tricked on a level that is not something that you can control. It's underneath everything else you have. It's in your core way of behaving and thinking. So I would leave you with the fact that even though all of what I presented is technically brilliant design work, the intent is what drove that, and I would say that you should design for intent, and every time you do that and be engaged with systems and solutions that are close to Cambridge Analytica, because we sell one of those at SoftServe for commercial purposes, ask yourself, what is your intent? Thank you.
Thank you, Evgeni. Maybe, guys, you have some questions. I think we have kind of 10 full minutes for question from your side. Just raise your hand if you want to. Sorry.
It's not a question, it's more like a comment, and then I would want to hear your thoughts on that comment. So when we talk about ethics in design, especially about any kind of what you're talking about today, right? It's always about some negative connotation that we program people to do something bad for those people in most cases. But I heard one really interesting thought recently, that there cannot be progress without the mistake, and we cannot create anything new without actually making the mistake first. So if you take any kind of technology that we have, first we made the mistake, but then we learned how to use it properly, right? And the same with that technology. There was really interesting talk from Facebook on the Singapore Brainstorm Design Conference this year, when they were showing how they had an ethical dilemma about all this topic. Because using that technology, they were able to define kids, that's what the goal, to define kids and teenagers who were suicidal, and they were able to predict with really, like, even to a date when those kids are gonna commit suicide. And they had the dilemma, should they actually use that technology to prevent that, or should they not use it because it's like personal data and all this stuff. So I would want to hear your thoughts on, do you agree that if we want to progress and we want to create something new, we still will make mistakes, and so those mistakes might be terrible, and they will be terrible, and it's impossible to not make those mistakes, otherwise we will not learn on them, as Ryan said.
Okay, great. I'm happy we have time. So, first of all, I do agree, and most of your comments, I failed again with that talk. Because that means that I didn't make the point right. What I wanted to do is explain that we created a piece that is a masterpiece of design, is what Cambridge Analytica is, and then we happen to use it in the wrong way. To extend that, so during the Second World War, there was a Japanese team called Team 47, or I think, So what they did is that they infected people with diseases, and then they cut them open right alive to see how that looks inside and what happens. So this is claimed as one of the most horrifying crimes in the human history. And yet we're probably curing many people because they drew all those atlases, and now we know how it looks like from the inside, and medical doctors know how to do it. Psychology did that so many times. There's a guy who killed a baby at the age of 9 months because he conditioned him to be afraid of stuffed toys. And that's one of those terrible mistakes that were, I wouldn't say needed, but just happened. And we learned so much from them and from failing. And of course, the price is unbearable because when you put human lives on that, and Cambridge Analytica did put human lives on the line too, I would say, and in different ways and rates. So I do perfectly agree with that. And one last thing I want to add is that I lost it. Never mind. Thank you.
Thank you for question. I'll try to look. Any more question? Okay, if not, you still will be able to do that during the all breaks and all workshops. Thank you one more time, Evgeni.
Thank you.
And